Good morning. Welcome back to the VIP seat. We have 135 A-list issues, Wheels Up earnings. Sit back, buckle up, and let's take off. All right, Preston. So I think we should kick off this morning with something that kind of got under your skin this week a little bit. But Wheels Up's earnings have come out for the first time, or maybe not for the first time in a long time, definitely. They supposedly have positive EBITDA. So what's going on over there?
Yeah, it came out on time. Well, or way ahead of time, because historically Wheels Up has reported earnings like 6 months in like a delay, like in arrears. So it takes them a long time to kind of get everything settled. They are apparently adjusted EBITDA positive. Okay. So they have an adjusted EBITDA profit. And to be honest with you, I think that I agree with the late Charlie Munger here and say that EBITDA is kind of a bullshit number. Okay. We're probably going to have to get the bleeper out for that. But if you're going to do adjusted EBITDA, and then that's the positive number, that is what Wheels Up is reporting. And I think that the thing that actually gets under my skin is the fact that I did not read a single piece of news out there that didn't say, what does that mean? Or let's dig a little bit deeper. It was just Wheels Up looks like it's going better. Here's the reporting. And I love our aviation media. They're all great. Don't get me wrong. But I think that there is no one asking any sort of questions here. And the most questions that I get about this are in group chats and in private text messages as opposed to reading any of it in the news. And I have yet to find anybody who is able to explain to me what a profitable adjusted EBITDA, like how it is the basis for really positive news.
Yeah, we've seen this with a lot of companies in aviation that are kind of the penny stocks that are like, hey, we've got like a positive adjusted, but like adjusted is not real. And EBITDA, it is not everything either. That's not cash flow. I think one thing that happens is that in our business, because it's so niche, I feel like most news stories are just reporting or like putting press release regurgitation out there. Not that that's bad, but it's just very like simple and factual. There's not a lot of analysis that takes place these days. And I don't know why. Maybe that's because journalism changing.
I think the problem to that point is the fact that there are great media outlets in aviation that could tell you forwards and backwards a safety manual, the FAA regulations, the performance specs, ops specs of an airplane. No one has like a financial analyst who can say, hey, let's dig in from not only let's look at this through a private jet operator standpoint, but let's also filter this through a financial analyst. Now, I am no financial analyst by professional trade. I do look at financial statements for a living, so I think I am probably 10% more qualified than the average bear, but I am by no means an equity analyst. I am way more on the debt side. But when I read these, I can't help but sit here and read and say, I don't get the picture. I don't understand the story from a financial standpoint. Aviation news tends to just say, this is the press release that I received. And no offense, I know way less about specific airplane pieces than a lot of aviation news, but they know nothing about financial statements, which is fine. But again, it just kind of becomes this like echo chamber of like, here's what the press release said. And I don't know if no one's really asking questions. Yeah. That was what really got me turned up over the weekend was I was like, this is so like, it's just reporting the numbers that came out in the earnings call and no one's saying, what does this mean?
This is not financial advice. We're not giving you investment advice. I'm going to tell you what I personally was looking at and what is interesting to me in this story, but take it at your own risk. Not financial advice again. All right. So I went through and I was looking at the quarterly statements, and just for the record, the end of year was announced, but they didn't release the entire financials yet. So we don't have everything. But what I pulled was from the investor reports. When we look at total revenue, it's gone down a little bit quarter to quarter. And this is, from September of 2024 to December of 2025. For those who are not, watching this on the screen, I'll try to be as descriptive as possible. Revenue is down a little bit, not much. Gross profit bumped up a bit, but again, that's new for this year. They really haven't had gross profit for the rest of the year, except for like a little bit in quarter two. But in Q4, we're only talking about $13 million in gross profit. Operating expenses, on the other hand, $55 million almost. Operating income, negative $42 million, plus interest expense, everything else you have in here. And then the tricky part that comes back in here is that Wheels Up did a leaseback agreement. So they've included $24 million in other income to show a positive EBITDA number, adjusted EBITDA
This is
number.
my favorite adjustment on EBITDA ever. It's the EBITDA number, okay? EBITDA is earnings, so earnings before, and we're just going to add some stuff back. R is rental of aircraft that you have to have in order to perform your ongoing activity. So adding that back, if you don't have the R, you don't have a business. And that's another thing that it's like, I get the argument for EBITDA, and I have presented the argument for EBITDA, to be clear, but the argument typically for EBITDA is supposed to demonstrate the financial health before and after the sale leaseback activity. That is really what that number is supposed to, you should basically say, here's generally what our rental expenses are. And by this recapitalization, EBITDA then improves. Like it's my favorite adjusted number in financial spreading, because it's like, it's useful, I think, but it's to show the ability to cover the rental payments. That is the purpose of EBITDA, right? Is to demonstrate to someone, I can pay you these rental payments because of here's all of the earnings. But when EBITDA is like not a super great sufficient number, it's like, and rental has to come before any earnings, any distributions, anything like that. Like that's I think the really tough part.
So the next piece that I look at, those are just kind of the quarter to quarter numbers, but I think percent of sales analysis is the most important thing you can do. And for people who don't understand what that is, it's basically saying for every dollar of revenue that comes in, I'm going to compare everything on a percentage basis quarter to quarter to understand where the business is heading. Are we spending more on financing costs than we used to? Are we spending more on employees? All those different things. And the concern I have when I look at these numbers on a quarter to quarter basis, adjusted for percent of sales, gross profit was at 7%. Compared to the previous year was 7.6% per dollar of sales that have come in, right? A little worse performance on gross profit. Operating expenses, they are cutting a lot of operating expenses on the percentage basis. Quarter four of this previous year, almost 30%. Previous year, 34%. So there's been a little bit of shaving of costs. Now, let's get back into that leaseback thing, because when I look at the interest expense now, I'm very concerned, to say the least. So they basically haven't changed any of their interest expense because they went to this leaseback, at least in this quarter. It's kind of trending the same as whatever their interest expense was before, but it's going to cost them more. Like, we know this. We've talked about it in previous shows. Doing this leasing is more expensive than, some other forms of financing. So I don't see how you get 7% gross profit in the best quarter of the year and you still have to pay 14% in interest cost and you're going to make money. How? Is there still operating expenses?
And
That's the tough part.
And also, don't forget the restructure of the Delta financing includes a PIK component to it. So again, PIK is a very financy term, and it stands for paid in capital. So basically what it is like you have this big debt instrument that refinanced all of the debt. And instead of you having, like, you think about your car or your house, and that is not like a PIK loan, where a PIK loan accrues, it erodes equity over time for any other equity holders, right? So Delta is actually accumulating more equity to itself. It's not necessarily taking cash flow from the business because they're not making you service that debt, but instead you're just accruing this paid in capital. So when we're talking about the lease payments, it's not like they're paying Delta their monthly house payment either. You have all of these different levers that are happening all at the same time. And again, I have a lot of respect for people at Wheels Up. I think George Mattson actually is very competent and an intelligent person.
There's positive movement. It is moving in the right direction.
Sure.
Yeah,
for sure. But I think that the biggest problem is that it has to continue this perpetual motion machine. And at the end of the day, you have $125 million of cash and like $100 million untapped line of credit. Those are two headline numbers that I read in the articles. You have like $734 million of deferred liability. Again, those are not exact numbers because, I can't pull those off of the top of my head. But the reality is you have this deferred payment revenue. They're moving over to kind of the traditional deposit jet card model, which is fine. It's a great model. I think that it's more sustainable than what they were doing before. But you still have these giant holes in the balance sheet that they're trying to plug with these activities. And that I think at the end of the day for me is the big question that I have is why, like, Again, I would love for somebody from Wall Street or from Wheels Up or whatever, it's publicly traded, so it's really hard to come on podcasts and talk about this stuff. But I have not heard the argument for lever to the heavens and then continue on. And I want to be proven wrong on that. And I think everybody in this industry wants to be proven wrong on that, right?
Yeah. No, look, they have a glimmer of hope in that expenses are being shaved. I haven't seen a meaningful improvement in gross profit yet, which is just a little bit of the concern for me. But obviously they are taking measures to reduce expense, to get the right fleet in place. I think there is a possibility for them. The question is, how long does this go on? And how long are the financial backers of the firm or new investors needed to come in eventually for capital raises for fleet improvements and everything else that needs to happen? I'm concerned in that way. I'm not concerned as an ongoing concern. I think they're fine for the moment. I'm just like, where are they going to head? Like, it just seems like such a huge hole that they're in, and they're slowly coming out of it. But when? I don't know.
Over $1 billion of cumulative loss. That's another big challenge. Like, yes. You're starting out in the hole, and that I think is also a challenge. I don't know. Jesse, I want to ask you a question because you have an operator background and you understand how to kind of like structure these financings. And maybe I'm the idiot because I am fully willing to be the idiot in this conversation and in this question because I want to understand. But when you're taking jet card deposit funds and commingling with ongoing business activities, like, did you guys ever do like a jet card program? Like, I know you did to wholesale and stuff, but did you ever do like direct retail jet cards type stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And we kept those cash in different accounts because they were deferred revenue. They weren't, things that we could count on, but that does not always happen. And I think that's really bad practice. If you're using money to pay, from Peter to pay Paul, essentially, is not a good situation.
Yeah. I think the one silver lining that Wheels Up has, and I think that this is what they've been leaning into over the last year and really has been doubled down on, is the synergy with Delta. You think about, like, I think I did not realize this until I met like a corporate salesperson for Delta. But like when you go to these big companies and you're selling these like corporate expense travel stuff, I think that's the one silver lining in this whole report is like they're just now realizing some of the Delta synergies when they're selling, hey, we'll do all your corporate travel. Oh, and also we can take care of your executive travel too. And those Delta salespeople can walk in and expand the sale, your cost of sales goes down at that point, right? So you have another thing to sell and you don't have to pay as much commission, as much overhead. And they've been consolidating the back end of their ad hoc charter too. I think those synergies are the silver lining here for Wheels Up. Like if I'm looking at this from like a big global picture, those are the two things that I would point at and say, that's where I have hope for Wheels Up in the long.
Yeah. Although then you still have to question, then why isn't gross margin improving meaningfully? If Delta's been kind of involved here now for quite some time, why haven't we seen that in the numbers? But we could go on for hours about this. And again, it's not financial advice.
Yep, exactly. Well, I think that brings us to everybody's favorite segment of the VIP seat, which is Mile High Madness. This is where Jesse and I go to social media. We find some of the best posts that are out there that we love. I'm going to go first, even though I think Jesse's got a good one as well. But I'm going to go first, and I am going to share Jesse's post. Jesse is looking for crew for the Kodiak, and the paint is done. And this thing is so sick. Like, there's a lot of really bad paint jobs that are out there, and there's some that are unique and also bad. This one is unique and also super cool. So check out the Shark in South Florida. Jesse's looking for crew. So if you have Kodiak experience and you live in South Florida or generally the Southeast and are looking for some contract work, reach out to Jessie. She's not going to advertise this for herself, but I'm going to advertise it for her because this paint job is so sick. So be sure to tag your friends in her post to get her some more contract crew.
Yes, please. Actually, Kodiak has not made, I think they've made like 20 something of the 900s. So there's not a lot of people out there that have been flying them yet, but even 100 experience is helpful. So let me know. Yeah.
Is Caravan like equivalent experience for you? Are you like, I mean, there's not a type rating. So like, do you have
type
PT6
rating?
experience?
There's no full motion sim. Yeah, I don't honestly, it's up to the insurance company. Like, we don't even make the decisions anymore. You have to like send something to the insurance company and say, okay, like, what do you think? Is this good? And then they tell you. So I guess they run the numbers and they figured it out.
Jesse on the soapbox. Don't get Jesse on the insurance soapbox. That wasn't the point of this segment. But
no.
But yeah, so reach out to Jesse if you've flown Kodiaks and want to fly some contract.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. All right. So I have to share this week, which is also going to tie in perfectly to our next story. So this guy, I don't know. Do you know him, Preston? You're into the sports realm. Michael Burt. Do you know this person? He's a coach.
He sounds familiar. Coach? He's also bald. So, I think he's beautiful, but
conservative. I still fly commercial, and then I'm very mad at myself when I do fly commercial because I got an airplane. Okay, but it's like there's a part of me being raised by a single mom and being conservative. And it's like, hey, it's going to cost me $40,000 to go to Vegas. Let me just fly commercial and rent the plane out when I'm not using it. So it really doesn't make a lot of money, but sure does help. We buy this airplane, and I started going, what if people could fly with me? All of these people paid $3,500 to $5,000 a piece to fly with me to a speaking engagement. Now we're using the airplane to generate some revenue. So is it an asset or a liability?
The FAA is looking. The FAA is looking at your Instagram. No. The FAA has social media too, my friend. No.
This is how bad illegal charter is, Preston, that there's literally a guy out there that has hundreds of thousands of followers who is bragging about selling seats on his airplane to people, which, by the way, when I did the research at my website, flyingprivate.org, guess who doesn't have a 135 certificate?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So
that's tough.
It's very disappointing.
So he got this idea. I think he got this idea. There's another guy who was talking about this, and he was like, for $20,000, you can buy my course, and as part of my course, you can fly with me somewhere. And I was like, no, that does not pass the sniff test, my friend.
It does not. The FAA does not care if you label it something else. And if you are obviously carrying someone on your airplane and collecting money, you can call it one thing, but they know. And it doesn't even have to be money. It could be trade for goods and services for, hey, you give me this, I'll give you that. It's any transaction of any kind. It is a revenue charter flight, and you have to have a 135 certificate to do that. So it's making me absolutely crazy. And I just want to say something about influencers for a moment that I think everybody thinks all the time, and we need to have like a conversation about, because this guy is not necessarily in our industry. He doesn't know any better, but there are people in our industry that are getting a lot of views and a lot of attention. Please do your research on who these people are and what they actually know. Because just because they put out multiple videos a day and they land in your feed because they figured out the algorithm and the first 3 seconds of getting your attention has worked really well for them, does not make them qualified to speak on topics. And I am seeing some, shall we say, moronic things on the internet from people that are appearing to be experts, and they are not. I think a lot of us know this that are listening to the show, but it's getting to like a fever pitch, and it's making me absolutely crazy.
Yeah, detailer guy, we are looking at you.
You're one of them. That's not the only one, let me tell you.
Sworn enemy number one of the VIP scene is detailer guy.
Everyone's
it brings up so this brings up a really good point though, because I think that people tell us all the time, like, oh, you're influencers. I think the difference here is that like we admit when we don't know something and we are like we're thinking about it, or we're like, discussing it and talking about it out loud. Like I try and do the same thing like on my Twitter account, is I speak from a place of authority on the things that I know about, and then I don't talk about stuff that I don't really know about. I don't know. Yeah. It's just a way to, everybody's just people at the end of the day. No matter how confident they sound, including us. Yes. So read everything, skeptically
and, see what their actual work history is and their experiences, not just the catchy video. But I will digress, and we shall move on into the topic of 135, because a whole bunch of problems have come to the surface again. Doug Gollin, I feel like we're quoting him almost every week because private jet comparisons, they do a really good job with their stories. But they have uncovered, which I see almost on a monthly basis, that the FAA's list of Part 135 operators had a huge amount of errors in it this month. Our fleet went from 11,000 aircraft to over 23,000 this month.
Magic. That's fantastic. Yeah, it's funny. So I got a text about this, and the person asked to remain nameless. But I got a text about this issue, and they said, hey, just want to let you know, like their company has a couple of certificates. He's like, half of our certificates are not on there. The other ones don't have the correct airplanes on it. He's like, we've got a lot of airplanes that actually show up on 135s that are like, they've since been sold and are flying 91 only. Like it's a total mess.
Yeah.
I think that this is like a part of, can you blame this on the government shutdown? They probably are going to try, let's be honest. But I mean, I don't know. This is pretty tough for an agency that's supposed to be like, I don't know, an arbiter of truth.
Yeah. So I have to go back on the history on this one. You know, a legal charter was getting a really big push from the FAA back in like 2019 or so. And eventually the industry said, okay, great, but you don't even publish a list of operators and who they are, what the tail numbers are. So how can you expect people to, you know, properly vet people if they can't even look them up on your website? So the FAA said, oh, hey, yeah, we can do that. So they started publishing this list. And, you know, hit or miss, there were some errors here, some errors there. There is still a manual process where it gets from the FSDO to the headquarters, and it's a mess sometimes to get there. So maybe it's not perfect, but at least it was something, right? But it feels like, yeah, since the shutdown, it's just become a complete disaster. I was getting the list consistently because we use it at PASA. So that's how we generate our databases. We do check them for these kind of errors, though. But I was using this list for PASA, and it was fine up until right before the shutdown. And then the list just disappeared for 4 months and we got no information at all. We've submitted FOIA after FOIA. We get nothing back from them. Then they released this list in like mid-January that had a whole bunch of tails missing. And then they released this list this month where they assigned 11,000 extra airplanes to a seaplane operator that operates like 2 airplanes. I don't know what's going on over there. It's a mess, but it's really a problem for consumers because how the heck are people independently supposed to find out information except for just asking the operator for their DO85, which is not really the best.
Right. And also, like, how many consumers know what a DO85 is?
They have no idea.
None. No. I'm gonna go with 1%, maybe less. Like, this is not something they ask. They're asking their broker, and then you have kind of the whole shady broker industry, and like even some of the good ones still do shady stuff sometimes, right? Like, you have to then trust this intermediary network to actually know who the users are. Then again, even good providers or seemingly good providers in the industry will do kind of edgy, fringy stuff. They'll fly something a couple of days. Like I heard this story about an operator who was like somebody that a lot of brokers use. Like I have a lot of broker friends that use them. Not really like a household name per se, but operator everybody trusted. And I had a broker friend, he said, yeah, they recovered me on an aircraft and I just was curious. And so I looked it up and it had not been conformed yet. And they're like, oh, no, don't worry. It's getting conformed in like 3 days. It's not a big deal. And it's like,
it is
that
a big
type
deal.
Of stuff, it is a huge deal. And so, like, that kind of stuff happens. And the reality is that if you don't have an up-to-date database for everybody to check against that, no one knows. And you have to take the operator's word for it, right? Because at this point, you take that scenario and you say, the operator says, oh, it's actually on there. It's just the FAA database is wrong. That's,
it's not great.
How many charter brokers are like, oh, send me all the documentation? They're not. Like, they don't really. I know very few charter brokers who actually do that kind of stuff.
We do our best at PASA. We hand check the list. We don't just ingest it and post it. Like we actually go through and say, oh, hey, there's missing, 300 tails from FlexJet this month. Something's wrong. So we try to figure that stuff out. But still, I can't even guarantee that our database is 100% accurate. It just comes from whatever the government gives us. And we do our best to make sense of it. But it's a travesty for consumers. I think we could use a lot more inspectors and a lot more good enforcement. And I'm not saying that because I'm like pro regulation, but I think there's a lot of cases in which good operators don't do well in this industry because the bad just take business from them and undercut them at every corner. So I wish we could fix that.
I also think that there's a couple of 4-letter agencies that could use a little pressure on the FAA to fix this, because this is not a hard problem. Now, if you haven't ever downloaded the 135, it's like a giant spreadsheet. That's it. It's not complicated.
It shouldn't be complicated to know which airplanes are conformed and approved by the FAA for use for passenger carrying operations.
And they release it like not that often. Like it doesn't get updated that often in the grand scheme of things.
Once a month. I mean, we ain't asking for much, as the song goes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I agree. Well, speaking of regulations, things you should avoid is accidentally taking Delta 8 gummies, as a few British Airways pilots found out. You know what? That sounds terrifying.
Yeah, like so we're kind of like playing with the format of the show this week. We've got the two big stories, which I think were meaty and interesting for everybody, but we're gonna hit some like funny, worth mentioning things that happened. But yes, the British Airways crew members were giving some gummies. I think in good faith, they took some candy, what they thought was candy from someone, and were literally out of their minds and had to recover. Thankfully, weren't flying the plane. They noticed that I think this was after a flight, and someone gave it to them. But can you imagine also who's taking candy from strangers? Like we were taught this in America. Do they not have Halloween over there?
Probably not. I mean, let's be honest. British folks, they live by their own rules over there. So don't take gummies from random people on the plane, especially if they're not packaged. Like if it's Skittles and they're sealed, even then it's probably sketchy. But good wake up call to not just randomly accept gifts from strangers on the airplane.
300 milligrams of THC in each gummy.
Woo!
Not that I know.
I mean,
I have no idea. What are you talking? I don't know what that means.
I think that's a lot. I don't know. It seems like a lot.
Seems like a lot.
Yeah. Seems like way too much to be over the limit if you're flying. So don't take candy from strangers. Well, there's been a big win for Gulfstream and the Trump administration. Transport Canada, apparently Truth Social posts work because guess what happened? The 500 and 600 have been certified by Transport Canada after like a long time.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, that's actually amazing. I know like Trump is a controversial figure in many ways. And I think the post, it's just not what I'm used to. It's not what I'm used to hearing and the way it's carried out, but it's unbelievable. I mean, a little bit of like pressure just from some social media post and the problem gets solved. Well, I mean, and a threat to impose 50% tariffs and destroy one of your really good industries in Canada, but it's absolutely incredible. It's been kind of solved. I guess the next rounds are going to be moving through faster at this point. But wow, here we go.
Yeah. Also, side note, USA beat Canada in overtime in men's hockey, also women's hockey. So big wins for the United States against Canada.
America.
That's right. USA. So, and we'll talk about tariffs next week because it's a mess once again, and we didn't have enough time to dive into it this week. There is an emergency town hall, by the way, just a side note. CGI is hosting an emergency town hall on Friday about that topic. I encourage everybody to tune in.
Yeah, and the other thing to tune in today, last kind of big story, we don't really know what it is yet, but Embraer Executive Jets is holding a virtual event today at 11 a.m. Eastern. They put out a teaser video, and I have to say the silhouette of the aircraft that was in this video, it looks kind of Praetor-ish, perhaps.
Yeah, I am going to have to not comment because I know too much information and I'm going to give something away that I'm not supposed to.
Okay, well, I know nothing, but a lot of people are speculating it's something maybe related to a Praetor or maybe like a step above the Praetor, but just given the windows, I think there were 7 windows on there, which could or could not mean something. Who knows? But it feels Praetor-esque, so people are thinking maybe something's going to happen with that. And they also kept using the word extraordinary, so I have to speculate maybe something extra. Who knows? But we'll see. Tune in at 11. I think everyone can go on there.
I think one of the things about airplane people is we are all major dorks. And so if you release a teaser, you better be cautious that everybody's going to try and figure it out, right? It's like everybody's very dorky about this stuff. I've gotten a lot of wild text messages of like things that people think that it is. I don't think that it's any of those things that anybody, outrageously thinks. Well, we have to give a shout out to Greg Norwood at GE Aerospace. Greg, you are the man. You shared the VIP seat newsletter with 2 people, which entitles you to a shout out on the podcast. So thanks, Greg, for sharing. If you also want to get a shout out on the VIP seat podcast live and in person, all you have to do is share the newsletter with 2 people. There's a referral link down at the bottom. Send it to 2 people. That helps us grow the show and you get a shout out on the podcast. It's the only way other than sponsoring that you can guarantee a shout out on the podcast. So be sure to share it with friends. thevipseat.com. Super easy to remember. Go like us on LinkedIn. Share all of our stuff. Find us anywhere you find us on podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, all of those good places. Leave a 5-star rating. Leave a good review. We always appreciate those. Until next week, I am Preston Holland for my awesome co-host, Jesse Nayor. And just as a little teaser, as a reminder, we have something really exciting in next week's show. So you're going to have to make sure that you tune in. It is going to be what I think is the first of its kind podcast recording. I'll leave that little teaser with you. So we will see you at 45,000 feet